It is that time of year when we all enjoy drinks parties. But this is another Bodleian object that will never actually fulfill its promise because we're never going to open this, despite the fact that it is full of excellent quality sherry. It is a very recent acquisition. I got it a couple of weeks ago from Blackwell's. And you may well ask, what am I doing using our budgets to buy a bottle of sherry? And I'm going to try and do my best to explain that and give you a bit of context at the same time. So it was a tradition fairly recently revived that when you were appointed Poet Laureate, you had the right to go to Portugal and choose a large vat of sherry. And one person who did that was Ted Hughes, who was appointed Poet Laureate. So he went, he chose his sherry, and then he had the sherry bottled and designed a label, Laureate's Choice, and a drawing, which is here. And this is bottle 464, signed by Ted Hughes. So as far as I'm concerned, this is interesting printing. That's one tick. My boss is up there, so I just have to be really careful.
So what more criteria than that?
So yeah, it's interesting printing. It's a manuscript because it bears his signature. It tells us something about editions because this is 464, and it indicates an important moment in our literary history because Ted Hughes was appointed laureate. And how am I doing? Yeah, okay, right. But there's another connection as well, and if you look at the design of this bird here in the laurel leaves, and then take a look at this manuscript, you will, printed book, you will see the signatures of Leonard Baskin and Ted Hughes, who collaborated together on a number of books. And Baskin was an amazing bookmaker and artist. And in fact, his widow, Lisa Baskin, is a great friend to the Bodleian and actually sponsors our printer in residence program. And we have one of Leonard Baskin's Albion printing presses over in the Old Schools quadrangle, which students regularly use. Anyway, but you'll notice the design of this bird here. This book's called A Primer of Birds, is very similar to Ted Hughes. And Ted Hughes was a reasonable artist. He was nothing like, his thing was poetry. He was nothing like as good as Leonard Baskin, but you can clearly see Baskin's influence on Hughes here. So just kind of nice little connection. Did I mention we do have Leonard Baskin's archive, which is absolutely fantastic research resource. And this is another collaboration between them. It's Ted Hughes, many of Ted Hughes's birthday letters, his amazing confessional series of poems about Sylvia Plath, again with Baskin's wonderful engravings. And actually when I was involved in acquiring the Gehenna Press archive, I went over to see Lisa Baskin in the States, and she actually gave me a gift of a proof of that engraving, so it sort of means even more to me. The bird again, this is actually my copy. Ted Hughes, one of his most famous collections is Crow, and again, this is a Baskin design. And we move on to the slightly more left field objects. Bear in mind that typeface, okay, used on a lot of Faber titles of this period. because it is a typeface called Albertus. And Albertus was designed by a German typographer and designer called Berthold Wolpe. And he did a lot of, if you go to the City of London, a lot of the Corporation of London road signs are in his typeface. I think the telephone box, telephone is in his typeface, and Faber used it a lot. And I just saw this in a sales catalogue and wanted it because it's another example of a legible object. If any object, as Andrew knows, because he has to make fancy boxes and things for fragile items like this, any object has writing on it, it's fair game, as you might have been able to tell. But this is nice because a member of his family, I think in memory of him, has actually used the Albertus typeface, sort of metal type, to impress the Albertus alphabet around the rim of the bowl. So that's just a nice thing, cool thing. And this arrived this week from the dealer Samuel Gedge. He's based in Norfolk. He has an amazing eye for manuscripts, books, and again, if you like, legible objects. And so I got this out because, again, it's all about typography. And one of the reasons I actually acquired this was because we have several reasons. We have incredible collections of children's literature, and these little objects were designed for children. The other thing we're going to do is put on an exhibition on alphabets. And when I saw these in Sam's catalogue, they are alphabets, A to Z, on lead, round about 1700, and they're what's known as horn books, which are children's reading aids. These are lead and they're tiny, they're vanishingly rare. We have other horn books, and they take their name from the fact that you would have the letters on a board, on a paddle, and then the surface would be covered by translucent, highly polished, very thin horn. But these aren't, and they've lost at some point their paddles, which would have held them. And they're so tiny, I wonder, were they actually for children or were they for a children's doll? I don't know. But as I said, about 1700, maybe even a little earlier, and just wonderful objects. And I do have a magnifying glass, because they're so tiny if you want to take a closer look. So, do take a closer look, that's fine.